Welcome to Wine Plus AI. We're your hosts and wine lovers, Adri and Zaina. This is the podcast where we break it all down for real people, not the people who are working in the terminal.
Just the truth about AI. What's brilliant, what's broken, and what's straight up ridiculous.
Let's get into it. Okay, great. So this is our first episode. Zaina, we're just going to get into a little bit about why we started this. So we had a conversation on the train, and we were complaining generally about AI. We work for an AI company, of course. Why did we decide to do this?
I think we really want to dive into the discrepancy that there is between what we see online about AI and the reality. And we work with it every day. So who better to give some context on that?
Yeah. And honestly, I think even some great podcasts out there, I'm not going to name them, but they are really good. But I feel like they're really just talking to technical people, even though they're kind of masquerading as something that's a bit more accessible. And honestly, I just need a podcast for me and where I can actually just have an open platform to whine about AI while having a glass of wine.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. So we'll only do this once because the people here don't know us. My name is Adri. I am the content lead for Neeple. I was previously super new to AI, and it was kind of interesting because when I joined Neeple back in last October, agentic AI wasn't really a thing, and I was in the business of category creation. By, I want to say like December, January, everybody knew what an AI agent was. So the kind of transition to being a complete AI newbie to actually really being in this space has been insane. So I'm coming from a marketing perspective, of course. And I am a millennial. So we all have feelings about that.
Of course. Yeah, I'm Zaina. I am the Chief Product Officer here at Neeple. Been with the company for about a year. And previously, I was also working on products utilizing AI, but not on a AI first product. So that was also a really big change for me and a really big learning curve, what that actually means and what an AI first product can actually do. And I think what you just mentioned over the last year, there has been such a crazy change in technology and what's possible and what isn't. And therefore also a lot of hype, some of which holds to be true, a lot of which doesn't. So super excited to dive into that.
Yeah, there is a lot of crap out there, and we're definitely going to get into that. So the format is basically we've chosen either an overhyped topic, something that we're dying to talk about and dying to whine about, and we choose the topic, we choose a wine, and then we just get together and we talk about it. So today we are talking about AI as your coworker. Is it actually any good at its job? There's a lot to unpack here because I think a lot of people are starting to use AI more and more in their day-to-day. But what is it good at? What is it bad at in real people's terms? Zaina, you selected the wine. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so today we're drinking a Vino Verde, which is light, it's fresh, it's a bit fizzy. So kind of like the new AI tool your boss makes you try, where you wonder, is it actually any good and can it actually do the job? And would I trust it to run payroll?
Well, cheers.
Cheers.
All right, just to get started, when we think about AI as coworkers, you've obviously been using AI in your day-to-day. You've been using it as a coworker. What have been the most, the aha moments versus the oh no moments?
Yeah, I think there is an endless amount of both. So I think on the aha side, for me, it's really been things such as summaries, like email drafts, and helping me kind of like declutter my brain. A lot of times with products, I have a lot of ideas that I maybe want to do, a lot of user interviews I have to analyze and research I have to analyze. And so there's a lot going on in my head. And so it's really helped me to like put everything together and like really organize my thoughts, I would say. But also on the other side, I've tried to use it for specific workflows, for example, my work, where I very quickly had to turn things off because it didn't do what it was supposed to. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, for me as well. I also have a very cluttered mind. I think we're very similar in that respect. So I love the speech to text. Yes. And then I literally just rant at the AI and I say, yeah, this is my idea. This is what I'm thinking. These are the requirements. I basically brief it just as if I were briefing a person. But luckily, the AI organizes my thoughts for me before it gets to a real person, which is actually such a benefit, and it makes me seem like so much more of an organized person. In that respect, I think it's more of like a personal assistant who can translate for me.
It's really funny that you mentioned the voice to text because you also send quite a lot of voice notes at work, right?
Yeah.
And then it generates the AI notes and the AI summary, and it's never usable for me. Like I always have to listen to the voice note, which I happily do. I also prefer the voice note aspect, but the summary it creates from it oftentimes actually misses the point that you're trying to make.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I actually didn't notice that. For me, it's mostly I'm not using it as with like kind of the summaries. I'm mostly using it to kind of create a brief, create some kind of organized thought process. So luckily I typically don't see that. But let's get into actually what AI is good at as a coworker, because I think we've already mentioned our favorite ones, but and the things that it's not quite good at quite yet. So I think one of the things that comes up a lot, and it's come up quite a lot in our conversations, is that AI kind of gives you this capacity or this capability to expand your breadth of skill. That you're able, all of a sudden, even though you're not a developer, you're able to write code. Even if you're not necessarily the best writer out there, something comes out that's much more polished. For you, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think from a product angle, where it's really helped me is put my kind of ideas and the specific problems we're solving or specific features into concrete drafts. So usually when I would brief the designer or design engineer, I go, okay, hey, this is the problem we're solving. This is kind of how I'm thinking about it, and I would describe it. But usually I have a vision in my head. I have an idea of what that could possibly look like and how that could fit with everything else we're building. And I'm actually able to very quickly also explain that to the tool that I'm using and kind of get a sketch, get a draft to help bring my idea to life and help also our design engineer understand what I'm actually trying to achieve, which has been really, really useful for me. How's that for you on the content side? I can imagine.
Well, I think for me, I've heard a lot, and I know you've said this, and I've also heard this from, across the internet, is that people are like, yeah, well, you should never use AI for idea generation. And I kind of want to play devil's advocate on that one because indeed, I think you shouldn't go to ChatGPT and say, what are the best ideas for a marketing campaign? No, that's a terrible idea. It's going to give you the most generic crap out there. But I do think that there could be some value in saying, okay, here's the context, here's our ICP, here's our customers, here's what we've seen be successful. Now, let's see what kind of ideas you can generate. And yeah, they're not going to be the best, but usually what I do is I do like to see some of them, and I do like to see, okay, I want you to create 10 different ideas in this kind of line of thought. 10 different ideas from a product perspective, 10 different ideas from more of a customer marketing perspective, and see what comes up. But I think for me, it's the summaries, it's the briefing that has been the most valuable for me. And then also quite a lot of problem solving. So I think in that kind of extending your breadth of skill, it is really valuable because there are some things with Webflow, our website builder, basically, that are too technical for me to problem solve. And I run up against a wall. And so I ask ChatGPT or I ask Claude or I ask Olo, for example, what's the answer to this? Like, here's the situation. Can you help me? And typically I get some responses that are actually pretty helpful and I'm able to solve it on my own before going to someone else. So
when you are getting that input from, let's say, Olo or ChatGPT, do you then rely on it blindly or still double check it?
I still double check it. I have to say I use multiple tools still just to be like, okay, what's one going to give me versus the other? Often it's the same response. So that's also a net positive in my view, but I do like to double check it. I have actually one of my friends recently, he went on a trip to France, I think, and he had ChatGPT plan the whole thing. And he documented it on his Instagram stories. And every other story was basically saying like, yeah, this was actually closed, or this bridge no longer exists, or yeah, the castle is not open to visitors. And it was every other story like a mega fail. And I think when you're relying on AI to generate some of the most up-to-date information, it's only going to pull it from the web and from publicly available sources. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, in this case, I don't think you should trust AI to do this, and that you should double check it.
It's funny that you mentioned that because one of my upcoming trips, I definitely use quite a lot of ChatGPT for planning.
Double
So
check.
I'm
Double
actually
check.
going to go ahead later and double check some of the things on there. But it was very helpful when it came to like finding flights.
Yeah.
But I will keep that in mind. Absolutely. Yeah.
So one of the other things that AI is actually pretty good at so far is deep research and context handling. So you upload file. Listen, I'm uploading files all the time. All of my like messaging, basically messaging positioning documentation. If I'm doing anything for our company, I upload it to make sure that it has all of that context. For you, I can also imagine that that's really useful.
Definitely. I especially use it a lot for user research and user findings. So I have a lot of calls, a lot of interviews. I mean, you've seen some of them, I think, which is a lot of text usually then in a transcript or even the summaries. So I do use quite a bit of ChatGPT or Olo to create really good summaries from that, and also to look at market trends and use that deep research layer as well to extend what I learned or compare what I learned and the results I got from the interviews with how the market is evolving and getting more external input as well. But I do think for the deep research, I would agree it's really, really good, but you really, really need to know what to ask for to get that right input as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think one of the uses that I'm currently setting up with our own product is that I really want to take all of our customer calls from Demo Desk, all of those recordings that have, these could be check-ins, they could be, kickoff calls, all of these sort of calls. And I want our product to actually look through and say, okay, this was actually the sentiment of this quote was actually quite positive, and pull all of those out on a regular basis, feed them to me. Then if they're good, I can then ask the CSM, the customer success manager, or whoever's responsible for that customer relationship to say, hey, could you ask them if we could use this quote for marketing purposes? Because that's like one of the biggest pain points as a marketer is pulling out those customer quotes. Or if you ask for them specifically, then they become very generic and very, yeah, a bit meh. So yeah, I would love to for AI to help me to bring those quotes to life. So that's still a work in progress. It's happening, so well, quicker actually than I thought. So yeah, very exciting for that. One other thing that AI does do pretty well, but I've not really tapped into this, so I'm curious if you have, is interactive collaboration. This is kind of what I'm talking about on the idea generation, right? A little
Yeah.
bit.
How do you define interactive collaboration?
Okay, so yeah, it's like a iterative dialogue where you're talking with AI to kind of problem solve something, propose alternatives, for example, critique your draft. I know a lot of marketers who are doing this, and honestly, maybe I'm a little too fragile for that. I'm like, if I want critique, I want it from a real person. I don't know, maybe that's an unpopular opinion. Are you using it like this?
Yeah, I am using it like that actually for my product PRD. So the kind of like requirement documents for the devs. So, but how I did that is I set a really clear framework and like a custom GPT on this is always what needs to be in every PRD. This is what we're optimizing for. These are the goals. But that is a prompt that I had to set first. And then basically ask it to give me concrete feedback on what I created based on that. And then it is quite accurate and it does highlight the right kind of like gaps that I have in my work. But it can be quite harsh, I do have to say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a confrontational.
Yeah, I think it's my own doing. I think I prompted it to be just very non-fluffy, just like straight to the point. Because I do appreciate direct feedback. But it can be quite harsh, yes.
Yeah, well, I think it's better than the sycophantic AI that most people have as a default. I think right with ChatGPT 5, they took out that sycophantic AI
Yes.
element. But yeah.
I don't know if you saw, this was going around like last week, where you can prompt ChatGPT 5 to be in cold mode, which basically removes any sort of fluff at all. And it's just operating really like a computer. So it will not have any like really interaction with you. It will just be like, yes, no, this is the right way to do it. So I tried it out. Was really curious to see, but that one is definitely one layer too harsh for me. Yeah.
Okay, well, good to know. And the last thing I want to say that people are really using, I think we're definitely using AI for, is multimodal fluid work. So, you have a brain dump with your AI, you're just talking at it and you're asking it to summarize, for example, like basically capture your ideas wherever you are. So where for me, for example, I used to rely on and I know you as well, I would rely on my notes app for cryptic 3 a.m. messages where I'm like, yeah, I've had this idea, I'm going to write it down. But now, of course, all you have to do is record and ask your AI to remember that for you.
Yeah, I think you've been on the receiving end of my 3 a.m. notes. I do love them, but yes, definitely the recordings make life a lot easier there and just really keeping track on what you're thinking about. Yeah. Also, quite often when I'm like either like walking to the office or leaving the office, I tend to think of something that might be relevant or just a thought that comes across. So I also always make sure to track those as well.
Well, I was also in a user interview actually last week for a product that I use, and the person doing the interview said, "Yeah, we were just chatting briefly about our product and what we're building," but she was like, "Yeah, it's really great nowadays that I just have AI record all of the notes, summaries," and she's doing user interviews just like you would, and she was like, yeah, previously I would have had to be taking notes, taking like quotes, really paying attention to the nitty gritty while not paying attention to the larger conversation. And she was like, yeah, it's really freed up quite a lot of brain space to really think about actually where do I want this conversation to go rather than exactly kind of I would say the admin of it. So that's also, I think, a big use that's really beneficial. Everybody now in their meetings has like granola. They have AI meeting note taker, for example, whatever it is.
Yeah, we used to always have two people in calls just for someone to be the note taker. So you could focus on the bigger picture, but it also means you cannot necessarily do as many spontaneous calls as well because you do need someone else to be part of it. And that person also needs to have enough context to take the right kind of notes as well. So having those AI note takers makes a big difference. If I also look at, like, for example, our customer team as well with their calls with their customers, having the note takers and also being able to then extract the action points from it just reduces their like post work for meetings by hours.
All right, so we're painting a picture of AI as like a really solid coworker. Probably more on the assistant side. You brain dump with them. You might spar with them a little bit. You might ask them to do some research. You might ask them to do a few things that you're maybe not so great at and that they can figure out the basics. That's the kind of coworker that we are now painting. We all know that it's not quite there yet. Otherwise, everybody would be already using AI. So what is it not good at so far? If you could just name one, let's see where that goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think AI is basically like a junior. I think that's the best way I would describe it. In the beginning of the career, beginning of the learning journey, I think one thing that it's not necessarily good at is sounding human, which makes sense, I guess. So if I look at, for example, so I have a product like writing my email drafts for me, but it's drafts. I'm not having it send them out directly because usually there is that human touch you want to add into emails to really make them yours.
And what is that human touch exactly? Because I have opinions about this, of course, but I'm curious what you gauge as not human.
I think the human touch really is responding to certain aspects of an email and maybe not responding to other aspects. So you often have like a lot of small talk in an email, like, hey, how's it going?
Personally hate. Sorry.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Me too. But AI would usually take that quite serious and write a full response to how are you doing? And it's like, yeah, I'm doing really well. Like, great day.
Overshare.
Like, I would never respond to an email like that. I think.
Are we robotic? I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But like I will acknowledge it and I will respond to it, but it will be short. Because I do want to leave the focus on like the main piece of my email and the action points. And I think AI is not necessarily good at really gauging what the right thing to focus on is in an email. And so if something's in the beginning of the message, it will most likely also prioritize that. And that's usually the small talk. Yeah.
Okay.
What about you?
No, for me, it's like some emails. Okay, listen, I aim to be as structured as possible. My background is in writing. So, of course, you have good, you have a certain structure that you should follow. But I have to say, with emails in particular, sometimes they get a little more unstructured. And sometimes you might respond. Again, it's also the order of responding to things and the order of importance. And I think, indeed, maybe you're right in that not maybe you are right in that respect. But I do think that there's a certain amount of like organicness sometimes that is unstructured in an email. In, let's just say, an email that you're just firing off to a colleague or to someone that you actually know pretty well, a partner that you might deal with often. And yeah, I think when something is sometimes too structured, it starts to feel more formal. And it doesn't matter how much casual tone you can put on that, it feels a little too tight, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
So I think this is going to be a conversation for a future episode for sure. And I'm really excited to explore that. But let's move on to some of the things, additionally, kind of the things that you shouldn't necessarily trust AI to do for you. One of them, I want to say, comes up a lot is no final answers in high stakes situations. So if you are making a medical decision or at work, you're making a decision for financial sign off on something, like you want to purchase a new tool, you want to purchase, you want to invest in a new strategy. Under no circumstances should you let ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI tool you're using make that final decision for you without reviewing and double checking all of the information.
Yeah, I think the double checking aspect is so important there. Like at the end of the day, AI will fill in its own gaps if it's missing certain information. So that will also happen with the financial decisions. So there is, I think, quite a big risk factor in letting AI make that final call in really important situations, unless you are 1000% certain you've given it all of the context it could possibly need to be able to make that decision, because it will probably hallucinate something otherwise.
But you know what? Even if you give it all of the information, sometimes it does hallucinate. This happened to me actually last week. I was asking Olo, our product, to basically to make a draft for a brief draft. I don't know why I can't say this. So last week, I was asking Olo, our product, to make a brief for a campaign that I wanted to run with an existing customer story. I gave it all of the context. I also gave it the link to the customer story, and I said, please pull out quotes from the customer story and stats from the customer story, both of which are actually there in the article and in the video and in the transcript. It completely made up like quotes. And I think it happens all the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's, I think a great example of where it can also hallucinate beyond. Absolutely. And I think like there's so much, prompting per se that you can do to like avoid the hallucinations. But if the goal is not to have to prompt and to know exactly what you need to input and be like, okay, don't hallucinate here, don't do this, don't do that. Because then you might as well just do it yourself faster, because you're going to spend all of your time writing a prompt for whatever tool you're using. So yes, it's definitely something that is a risk factor. And for big decisions, would always double check.
All right. And the next one you should never trust AI to do, or it's just not ready yet, is memory or long-term teammate duties. So you hear a lot of these LinkedIn bros who say, I'm replacing my whole team with 5 AI agents. I'm never going to hire another marketer. I'm never going to hire another product person. This is just it. And trusting AI to basically not just do the task of that particular person that one time, but asking them to do it again and again over time, I think you're going to lose basically the creativity and actually things that are going to get your company further. They might be able just to do a bare minimum. What's your thoughts?
This might be a controversial take, but I'm not sure I fully agree with that. I think it really depends on the kind of task that you're trying to get AI to do. So I think if they are really straightforward, like repetitive tasks that don't require critical thinking, thought, or reason per se. I think AI can definitely be that supporting partner to do this on a long-term basis and to continuously support. But as soon as it comes to anything that does require creative input to actually evolve and move forward, that's where it breaks. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily fully agree with that statement, but I can see where it comes from.
But at the same time, so for example, invoices. So our product now can automate basically your invoice process, which is great. Um, but I don't see a world. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Were people basically employing one person just to do all of their invoices?
I think it depends on the company, but in a lot of cases, it is something that is kind of spread across different people in maybe the finance department, where everyone has to do part of that process on a regular basis. And so now for all of them, a bit of time frees up because they can rely on a product to do this process for them. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a full-time job for one person, unless it's a really big organization with a lot of invoices, of course. But I think it's more it remove some of the overhead.
Yeah. Okay. Next one is complex and creative judgment. So obviously AI is not a tastemaker, thank God. I still have a job. I think specifically it's not yet good at developing, let's just say, it can do it. It can do it, just not well. You can ask an AI to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking for my brand tone of voice. Can you just pop it out, do it? Yeah, you can, but it's not going to sound unique. It's not going to sound human. It's not going to be, yeah, it's not going to stand out. So I think it can do it, just not well.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with this one. I think this is where the layer of AI is input based comes in. So it will just be as creative as the input it has received, and it will not come up with new ideas. So it will not evolve your strategy, it will not evolve your branding, tone of voice, whatever that may be. So yeah, it is quite limited. So it can help you with I think quick iterations, quick ideas, or maybe also diversifying ideas you give it as input. But the creativity still needs to come from somewhere.
But actually where it does stand out is making the output consistent. So if you give it a brand tone of voice, if you give it your vision, your kind of creative input, then you can basically iterate on that in a much more consistent way. So there's a plus and a minus here. As long as you have the kind of base creativity, you're all good.
Yeah, I think it's all about the nuance, right? It can definitely help streamline, but yeah, the input still needs to be there.
Okay, so this is an interesting one. Motivational, like motivational tasks, so like keeping people motivated. Apparently, studies are showing that people feel less intrinsically motivated when AI does the heavy lifting. I would have to pull out the study for this one, so I'll do some deeper research. But basically, you should avoid letting it absorb tasks that give your job more meaning. And that seems weird. I don't know.
It does, but I think I get it.
Yeah.
I think if I look at my job and if I look at the things that like give my job a lot more meaning, it's the aspect of the user research, for example. It is really sitting down and finding the right problems to solve, writing PRDs, things like that. If AI would start doing those things for me, I would also feel less motivated because for me, I really appreciate the human interaction in the user research conversations. You learn so much also between the lines, how people interact, how people behave, or also when they're trying out your product in front of you. And I really enjoy the aspect of finding the right problem to solve. That's exactly what I love doing a day long, basically. So if I would start doing those things for me, I also wouldn't enjoy my work as much, I think.
Okay, but then we're already going back to this whole idea of like, yeah, you have to come with the idea, you have to come with the creative input. Yeah, you can use it as a sparring partner. You can maybe ask it to do some more research, but to then say like, hey, can you come up with the problem that we need to solve as a business?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a bit far-fetched. Not ideal. But I think it is it does actually motivate me to do my work more when I use it for all the things in between, like may that be scheduling those calls or writing the follow-up emails for those calls, and streamlining my PRDs, those research documents, and writing summaries on the research. So it really helps me reduce the like overhead that comes with all of that, but it allows me to focus more on the things that give my job meaning.
Last one. This is sensitive and confidential material. You gotta be careful with this one. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. I think this is also its own episode within and of itself about basically how it handles sensitive and confidential information. Can you trust it to keep that just to you? Yeah, you just need to be careful. I don't want to give legal advice here, but like if you're dealing with customer information, employee information, yeah, you just got to be careful.
Yeah, you do. And I think, to put it bluntly, you have to just make sure to look at how your tools are using the information. And if you're able to turn it off to be used to train models, I always do.
But also, devil's advocate, let's just say you had an intern who was handling some sensitive customer information or employee information. Wouldn't you also be like, yeah, you have to deal with them a bit carefully. You have to make it explicit. You have to, and still at the end, you can't guarantee that they're not going to go home and tell all of their friends about it. So yeah, it's just the volume and the kind of nature of it. We still don't trust it. And that's okay. I think we should continue not to trust it. We should continue to be very critical. But yeah, I think we also should be critical with people as well.
Yeah, I think it's a very fine line where it ends, where it begins. Yeah.
All right. So all in all, let's just sum this one up. There's a lot of things that AI can do for you. There's a lot of things that it does reliably, pretty well. I think there are still quite a few question marks, still a lot of double checking that you have to do. In my opinion, how I always put it, especially when you look at agentic AI, so AI that's actually doing things on your behalf, taking over workflows, still think that there's a lot of double checking. It's a lot like a very enthusiastic intern, where you basic tasks, I think with a lot of, you can give it over with a good amount of certainty. More complex tasks or more context-driven tasks, yeah, I think it's still not 100% there.
Yeah, and I think even if you had an intern, you gave your intern complex work, you also would double check it. So it does make sense definitely to also look at building your workflows in a way that allow you to double check it and to keep that layer of quality that I think everyone also wants to have in their work. Yeah.
All right. So that's this episode wrapped. This podcast, Wine Plus AI, is part of a wider content shindig that we're trying to build called the Joy Lab. So essentially, this is a Substack made for people who are non-technical, who are curious about AI, trying to figure out how they can use AI more, do more with AI, figure out how it fits into their daily life and daily work life. But with a catch, not just to do more because we are all robots trying to just produce, but actually to find more joy in what you do. So I think that's an important factor here. We want a little bit more joy in our lives. So thanks for joining us, and cheers.
That's it for this week. You know the drill.
Like, subscribe,
and see you next week.
Cheers.